Do you ever feel like society has failed to prepare you for the real world? Do you suffer from anxiety, depression, or panic attacks? Maybe you've tried to fix it. You wake up with Sam Harris, took some online courses, went to therapy, read Atomic Habits, listened to all the Jordan Peterson lectures, hired a life coach, learned the breathing exercises, journaled, prayed, meditated, manifested, and optimized your morning routine. And some of it helped. You sleep a little better and you have your life in slightly better order. But probably, if you're honest, all you've really done is manage your anxiety, not resolve it. And there's a reason for that. Typical approaches to anxiety fail because they treat symptoms and ignore causes. They treat the person as if he merely needs more information, better habits, better meds, or better coping mechanisms, when in reality he is suffering from two critical losses: the loss of communal belonging and the loss of basic human competence. I have argued elsewhere, in my video on the meaning of life, that much mental unhealth is a result of tribelessness, deracination, and the loss of organic belonging. Modern people are adrift in a mass society, not integrated into real, thick, human-scale groups. We've been taught that tribalism is icky and something of the past, but of course this is nonsense. We are inescapably tribal animals, evolved over millions of years for life in small, close-knit groups. And without a recovery of intentional community, some degree of depression and meaninglessness is guaranteed. Yet, the problem is not just that modern people lack real community, it is also that many have never developed into competent adults capable of building or sustaining one. This is not chiefly a problem of insufficient information. You probably know orders of magnitude more than your ancestors did about psychology, trauma, productivity, nutrition, and personal growth, but you can do less than they could with your own hands, attention, judgment, and will. You're not anxious because you're broken, you're anxious because you're unprepared. Credit for this video's insights goes to Luke Weinhagen, Senior Fellow at the Natural Law Institute and founder of the Core Human Competence curriculum. Core Human Competence, CHC, is Luke's practical contribution to the Natural Law Institute's work in cooperation science. For years, the NLI's focus has been the top-down legal, institutional, and social frameworks that enable cooperation at scale. What Luke realized was that those frameworks rest on the assumption that the population operating within them is actually capable of genuine cooperation. This led to his formulating the cooperation competence hypothesis, which holds that stable cooperation at scale is possible only in populations where a sufficient proportion of individuals possess the physiological, psychological, cognitive, and perceptual capacities required to refuse participation without catastrophic personal cost. Because we've lost these core human competencies, much of what now passes for cooperation is actually compliance, because the individuals involved lack viable refusal capacity. This also helps explain much of what appears to be pathological anxiety, which is better understood as accurate threat detection in response to a serious vulnerability, namely dependence. Anxiety is, more often than not, the nervous system calling attention to the fact that your survival and stability rest on conditions outside your control. Fear is a gift because it is vital information. If you cannot secure food without a supermarket, water without municipal infrastructure, warmth without utilities, shelter without a landlord or bank, safety without police, income without an employer, emotional regulation without external reassurance, or belonging without institutional permission, then your body is not malfunctioning or confused when it detects danger, it is accurately reporting an existential threat. Do you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs from your high school or college psychology class? It is composed of 5 tiers of needs, ranging from the most foundational, immediate material requirements of survival to the higher order, more abstract pursuits that are possible once conditions of survival are secured. The bottom 2 levels, physiological and safety needs, are usually glossed over because we now take them for granted. We skip ahead to the belonging, esteem, and actualization levels, looking for happiness and fulfillment there. This is a mistake. The basics, food, water, shelter, sleep, warmth, hygiene, property, resources, protection, are prerequisites for the pursuit of any higher order aspirations like vocation, love, status, purpose, and self-actualization. You cannot realize your higher self while forgetting how to be human. If you're dependent on the system to meet all of your physiological and safety needs, your brain will register the mere possibility of systemic breakdown or supplier disruption as an existential threat. If you can't meet your fundamental needs yourself, you should be anxious, because that's your brain doing its job and alerting you to a serious vulnerability. When people are told to breathe, affirm, reframe, pray, or medicate their anxiety away, they are usually being trained to suppress the very signal that should be driving them to address their vulnerability. They are treating symptoms, not the cause. You're likely anxious for a very good reason, and not addressing the reason is like trying to solve the problem of a smoke alarm by taking out the batteries instead of putting out the fire. Let's talk for a minute about civilization. We tend to imagine that, over millennia, humans have escaped the harshest aspects of life. From foraging bands to settled villages to farms and towns to cities to states, life becomes progressively more insulated from hunger, exposure, violence, disease, and uncertainty. We call this story progress, and the result, civilization. There's some truth to this. Civilization widens the margin between error and death. Outside civilization, the feedback loop is short. Exposure, hunger, or miscalculation can easily lead to the death of the organism. Civilization pushes the death thresholds outward. Stored grain, laws, medicine, infrastructure, and accumulated knowledge give humans more room to absorb damage without immediate catastrophe. Civilization enables study, monumental architecture, invention, and exploration, which are more difficult when attention and energy must be spent managing immediate pressures like hunger, predators, and weather. But widening the margin cuts both ways. On one side, it creates room for adaptability, the ability to endure short-term damage for long-term gain. On the other side, it creates room for entropy, the ability to enjoy short-term gain while pushing long-term damage into the future. Civilization increases our capacity for both greatness and decay. In either case, whether we choose adaptability or entropy, the cost will be paid. This is because civilization does not and cannot cancel nature's feedback. Nature always performs full cost accounting. Costs may be visible or hidden, immediate or delayed, privatized or socialized, but they will be paid. And what is not paid for early is paid later with interest. If you put your hand on a hot stove, you learn your lesson instantly. But a society can coast for generations on borrowed time, inherited surplus, and luxury beliefs, and by the time the consequences become unavoidable, the damage may be irreversible. Civilization cannot erase costs. It can only delay, disguise, redistribute, or shift them onto other people, institutions, or future generations. In recent centuries, civilized life has made the basic conditions of survival seem like a given, causing people to forget what it took to make life this way. This is the danger of civilization. People begin to mistake delayed feedback for escape from nature's laws. For most of human history, adulthood was not conferred by age, but achieved through competence. Parents, extended kin, and the surrounding environment trained children into the basic capacities required to remain alive, useful, and responsible. Full human development still involved learning how to make fire without matches, find and purify water, recognize edible plants and prepare food, build and repair tools, read the weather, handle animals, endure prolonged discomfort, assess people and situations for danger, cooperate under pressure, and accept responsibility for failure. These were not then called survival skills because survival wasn't a hobby like pickleball or podcasting. These skills were simply what it meant to be human. Then, following the Great Depression and the Second World War, that chain of transmitted core human competencies, passed down successively for about 200,000 years, was broken. The generation that endured great poverty, hunger, uncertainty, and mass mobilization in war desired to build a world in which their descendants would not have to experience the same hardships they did. And the post-war optimism and material surplus made that ambition feel realistic. Although their intentions may be understandable, this was a big mistake. Fast forward to today, and most of us have forgotten how to be human. The results are everywhere. Tens of millions of grown men search YouTube for tutorials on how to tie a tie. Books become international bestsellers for explaining basic self-management. Men who can operate complex software can't fix a leaking sink or change a tire. COVID really exposed the depth of the problem. People panicked over shortages of toilet paper. The planet's apex predator, a creature that survived ice ages, hunted woolly mammoth with spears, built wooden ships to cross uncharted oceans, hand-carved cathedrals, and split the atom, was thrown into a state of mass anxiety by the scarcity of thin industrial sheets of paper used to wipe its ass. The toilet paper panic was not simply about toilet paper, but what the shortage exposed, that people felt they had no alternatives. We have become so dependent on industrial conveniences that even minor disruptions reveal profound helplessness. This is the consequence of substituting convenience for competence. If society meets people's needs without teaching them how to meet those needs themselves, it extends childhood indefinitely, producing people who are chronologically adults but developmentally children. The immature child does not understand their dependence, which is fine. Childhood is naturally a period of subsidy, protection, instruction, and gradually expanding responsibility. The undeveloped adult, however, has awareness of need, coupled with a vocabulary of rights, an attitude of entitlement, and the political means of moralizing their dependence and externalizing the costs. The undeveloped adult demands access to housing, healthcare, education, validation, self-expression, and protection from physical and emotional distress. They do not experience society as a field of reciprocal exchanges, but as a network of providers, suppliers, dealers, and rescuers. The adult child wants autonomy without obligations and rights without duties, and because they are perpetually vulnerable to the withdrawal of their unearned provisioning, they suffer from chronic fear and anxiety. This is the sad psychological condition of the undeveloped adult, too old to be innocent and too dependent to be mature. Core Human Competence, CHC, refers to competence in the 4 necessary domains required for adult agency and genuine refusal capacity: physiology, psychology, cognition, and perception. Physiological competence means you can navigate the physical environment, sustain biological function, and manage kinetic threats. It includes strength, endurance, mobility, treating injuries, and the practical skills required to meet your basic physical needs for food, water, warmth, shelter, hygiene, safety, and defense. This is why CHC takes deadly serious those primitive skills most modern people think of as obsolete. The invention of fire was one of the great thresholds in the making of man. By cooking food, early humans could externalize part of digestion, breaking down meat and plants before they entered the body, and allowing more energy to be spent on growth and the expansion of the brain. With fire, man did not merely adapt to the world, he began to transform it. Fire made us human, yet an average Western adult would struggle to produce it unassisted, even if his life depended on it. Cordage is another ancient threshold, enabling the hand to extend itself across space, and separate parts to be bound into a single structure. Through the twisting together of thin fibers, you create something strong and incredibly versatile. Rope, fishing net, animal snare, bowstring, handle, harness, lashing for a shelter, raft, tools, and more all begin with this primitive technology. In fact, cordage predates fire, and probably predates human beings too, with the oldest piece of rope ever found, in a cave in France, likely created by Neanderthals. Maybe civilization won't totally collapse in your lifetime. You may never need to start a fire without a lighter, dig a sewage system, build a raft, or purify groundwater. But knowing you could do these things is the point. Your nervous system doesn't care about your intentions or what you believe you can do. It only cares what you've proven to yourself you can do. Demonstrating to yourself the simple ability to make fire puts your nervous system at ease, because it means that the world is not merely something happening to you, it is something you can act upon. You are not helpless before cold, darkness, hunger, or system failure. You possess a primitive but profound ability to make raw nature conducive to your survival, and to produce the most fundamental survival tools in human history. Psychological competence means you can regulate emotions under pressure so that fear, stress, anger, or rejection do not produce paralysis, panic, or impulsive reaction. This does not mean you don't feel these emotions, but that you can receive them as information, interpret the signal, and respond accordingly. Take an emotion like fear, for example. Fear tells you that something in your environment, relationships, status, resources, or future may require attention. The psychologically incompetent person experiences that signal as an invasion. They may be ashamed of it, confused by it, or desperate to make it stop. The psychologically competent person asks, what is this telling me? Is the threat real? What capacity do I possess? And what action is required? This capacity is trained the same way physical capacity is trained, through controlled exposure. A man who has never been struck, shouted at, rejected, or practiced remaining calm amidst chaos can offer his nervous system no proof that he can survive conflict, embarrassment, pain, or uncertainty. Conversely, a man who has trained under pressure, sparring, hard labor, confrontation, responsibility, exposure to cold, hunger, fatigue, silence, and rejection, has learned that discomfort does not equal death, and that external pressure does not automatically obligate submission. You may never need to fight for your life, be ostracized, or go hungry, but just knowing that you could tells your nervous system that you are not helpless. Cognitive competence means that you can achieve decidability. You can recognize what is happening, identify the relevant variables, compare their possible states, understand what operations would change those states, and choose a course of action. You can observe, orient, decide, and act without waiting for perfect information, permission, consensus, or emotional certainty. Take the cognitively incompetent person whose car breaks down on a cold road at night. They experience the situation as a vague catastrophe. Something bad has happened, roadside assistance needs to come help, and until help arrives, they are trapped and anxious. Contrast this with the person who immediately begins disambiguating. Is the primary problem fuel, engine, weather, location, lack of tools, lack of communication, or risk of exposure? Which variables can be changed immediately? What actions buy the most time? Even if they don't know how to fix the car, they can still define the problem, reduce confusion, sequence their options, and act. You may never need to repair a vehicle in the cold, find your way without GPS, or evaluate conflicting claims during a crisis, but just knowing that you could puts your nervous system at ease. Perceptual competence means you can regulate attention and achieve situational awareness. This involves noticing environmental baselines, what normally occurs in a given time and place, and anomalies, deviations from that norm. Reading kinesics, the posture, gestures, microexpressions, gait, and other forms of body language. Attending to biometrics, physiological signs of stress, fear, anger, and exhaustion. Reading proxemics, the way people use distance and positioning in space. And atmospherics, the general mood of a room, crowd, street, or other public space. A perceptually competent person is not wandering about with their head in the clouds or staring at their cell phone. They can detect danger, opportunity, tension, or manipulation early enough for physiological, psychological, and cognitive competence to matter. All these forms of competence reinforce one another. With physical capacity comes psychological confidence. Psychological regulation preserves cognitive clarity. Cognitive clarity directs measured action. And perceptual awareness buys time for the other capacities to operate. Together, they produce the foundation of the fully mature, fully developed adult human. Because modern life has removed most of the natural pressures that build competence, we need to reintroduce deliberate proxies for nature's feedback. We understand this principle intuitively when it comes to the body. The modern environment no longer requires much physical strength, so we go to the gym and deliberately reintroduce resistance, impact, and repetition so that our bodies don't deteriorate. The same principle applies to the whole person, not just the muscles. We need to intentionally cultivate not only physiological, but psychological, cognitive, and perceptual fitness as well. Building back core human competence serves both an individual and collective purpose. The incompetent adult enters relationships from a place of dependency, which, over time, tend to become systems of guilt, resentment, and extraction, because the dependent person must take from others what he cannot provide for himself. The competent adult, by contrast, can enter relationships from a place of strength, calm, and value contribution, and is therefore better able to shoulder responsibility, contribute reciprocally, and lend support to his community. Self-determination, then, does not weaken community, but strengthens it, and core human competence therefore scales beyond the individual. At the individual level, competence calms the nervous system by reducing real vulnerabilities. At the communal level, it enables self-governance and distributed local problem-solving. And at the civilizational level, it restores the human foundation upon which our institutions depend. Evidently, the regime wants you to remain dependent. Why? Dependent people are easier to govern, medicate, frighten, and control. Human competence threatens that arrangement by reducing the state's leverage. A competent population needs fewer managers, and is harder to frighten with scarcity, seduce with comfort, or herd through social pressure. You are hostage to the system to the degree that you cannot meet your needs without it. Until we regain core human competence, we will be managed like children by a paternalistic state, and to some extent, we will deserve it. The path back to human competence begins with being honest about our dependency. Ask what would happen if current systems and supply chains failed. Then choose a weakness and train under someone competent. Find an instructor in first aid, self-defense, or food production. Don't just absorb theory from books or watch video tutorials. Put yourself under pressure and turn propositional knowledge into real-world procedural capability. It's time to reclaim our birthright and become dangerously competent again. Then teach your children to do the same. Our deepest problems won't be solved by infiltrating institutions. No legal reform or constitutional redesign can create a strong polity from a fragile, dependent population. You are descended from the planet's apex adaptive generalist. That ancestral inheritance is not gone, it is just dormant. Core human competence is how you wake it back up.